You're listening to WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio, Bridgeport, Chicago. It's January 4th, 2018, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, a seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, a seen from again.
So anyway, Live Oak Hefeweizen's really good beer. It's a little, no, just kidding. Not. Welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. It really is January 4th. We're not channeling a little bit of a past show. Hello and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you, as pretty much always, from Studio B here in the Co-Prosperity Sphere in Bridgeport, Chicago. Thanks again to Lumpen Radio. Was that a real beer crack?
That actually wasn't me.
That was Chris, I see. I want to thank everyone out there who's listening via the airwaves on 105.5 FM, Lumpen Radio. I've been noticing the reach is pretty good, man. The reach is pretty good for a low-powered FM station. I've been pretty happy. I've been testing it out, and it's got really good reach. So thanks to all you guys who have tuned in, and thanks to everyone who, no matter where they are, you can be tuning in via the app, the Lumpen Radio app, or TuneIn Radio, or any sort of internet radio application. Should be able to get 105.5 FM WLPN LP on there. If you are listening live, I recommend that you should get over to the live chat room. That is at tlk.io/WLPN. People have a good time in there, mainly making fun of Edmar and I, primarily, I would say, is probably the main topic. You on there right now? Are you co?
Yeah, someone already said, shut off the crappy music, will you?
Yeah. There you go.
That's
They're off to a good start.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys. For those of you who are listening via internet download, podcast, all that stuff, thank you as well. And I wanted to, thank everyone who listens. But if you're listening for the first time or haven't listened in a while, although I can't imagine anyone taking a break from this show. I mean, I can't imagine 2 hours being nearly enough every single week of this sort of talk. But I wanted people to know, I like to tell people what this show is about. Basically, the goal of this show is to open up a window into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer getting into your glass feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beer with people whose opinions I respect and admire. And it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And there's a few things I want to touch on as I see if I can do it as I take off my hoodie in the ever increasingly hot Studio B. I should have known better. It's literally 0 degrees outside, and one would think that the studio would somehow become moderate then, maybe even a regular temperate climate in here when it's 0 out. But it's a weird little vortex in here where no matter what it is out there, it's always extremely hot in here, and nothing out there affects it, which is kind of incredible, really. It's in a way incredibly insulated. But so I'll do that as I'll start taking off my hoodie. Don't worry, I've got plenty of layers. Josh, especially, will be happy to know. But there you go. We know you're on.
I feel better.
Yeah. This is our year-end / New Year show. We were going to have it last week. Didn't happen. Stuff happens, so we've got it this week. So it's going to be a little bit different show this week. little bit of the same, a little bit different, and I'm excited. I'm quite excited. This is the second time we've done it. It was fun last year, and we can even go back and look at some of the stuff we talked about last year. Ed, you were on last year's show.
No, I wasn't. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah. Well, you probably weren't scheduled, but you were on it. I will say, first and foremost, though, that your opinion, Ed, is your own, and that doesn't go for you. That goes for everybody on the show tonight and every night. They're just your own. You don't represent Lumpen Radio. You don't represent the Beer Temple or anybody, because you're probably going to be spouting off, doing hot takes on a number of topics.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, and you don't truly represent them at all.
No.
You just represent yourself.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. Yeah.
I represent me.
And that goes for everyone. So with that, I'll introduce my panel. We do it in order of seniority. So, Ed, take it away. How are you? What's new? Happy New Year.
Chris, Happy New Year. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show half an hour ago.
Yes.
I'm delighted to be here. Very prepared for tonight's topics. And I'm very excited about this Hubbard's Cave Volume 10.
Oh, 10.
IPA.
Oh, man.
Now,
I've got the
I
old
wanna-
stuff on at my place. I got 9.
There's haze in here.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that the Hubbard's Cave is one of the original haze
But
purveyors
bombs in Chicago? Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would.
One of the OGs of the haze.
Yeah, I would say that.
And
I'd say
it's
that
a
that's
delightful, balanced, delicate, not super hazy IPA. So kudos to you, man.
fair. Cool.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Why don't we just... Well, it's not in order of seniority. I think, Josh, you're next, man.
How about it?
How are you, Josh Noel?
Doing great.
What's up with you?
Chasing a 2-year-old. Yeah, you've been there.
I know. I am there.
You are. You are there. Yes, you are there. And
I was there and I'm there.
And
I
you
have-
probably don't know, but I'm writing a book because I don't talk about it very much. Certainly
You're
not
writing-
on Twitter.
Wait a minute. You're writing a book?
I know, shocking, right?
Didn't you write a book, actually?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is it's I'm in final, like literally the final edits right now. I'm reading through the manuscript for the 7,492nd time, looking for mistakes, which fortunately not
Yeah.
too many of, and typos. And then it is about to get typeset, and it will be in this world June 1st. So I'm just sort of finally wrapping.
All right, quick
All
questions because we've got a lot to get to, so I'll make it brief. So, just out of curiosity, so in terms of like percentages, let's say you hand in edit, like your first initial edit, and let's say that's 100%. By the fourth edit, are you at 110%? Are you at 25%? How much gets edited onto or added to or edited from original, at least in your case?
You mean has it been dramatically edited?
I guess, is that normal for it to like get cut in half? Is it,
There's a.
or is that something that writers don't like to talk about?
Oh no, I'm happy to talk
Okay.
about it. Basically, I my contract called for 80,000 words. The book, by the way, for those who don't know, is about Goose Island, Anheuser-Busch, and how craft beer became big business. My contract called for 80,000 words. I turned in 140,000 words. My editor said, "Whoa, get that down to 115,000 words," and then I got it down to 115,000 words. So it's a pretty informal process.
Okay,
That's basically how it worked.
got it. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on, and good luck with that.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me 45 minutes ago.
Yes. And then Jerry Nelson from Unane and Hubbard's Cave and from other things, I'm sure, but beer related, it's mainly Unane and Hubbard's Cave. How are you? Been a
Doing
bit.
Doing great. I had to take off from doing this show for a few months, but happy to be back.
How come you had to take some time off? Sorry, I was blowing my nose.
Well, we had a really busy end of the year, and we were just not. We just had to focus on that. I couldn't get away, so.
Unacceptable. Apology not given or
I
accepted.
was going to say I was not going to say the B word because we're all like that, and but it slipped.
Yes,
So,
everyone's
unfortunately,
busy. No, it's okay. Well, thanks for coming on.
thanks.
And my last guest is Mr. Chris Furnari of Brewbound, and that's essentially where you're from, right? What's your role there? What's your title, Chris?
My title is editor of Brewbound. So yeah, I spend a lot of time staring at a computer screen.
Nice. What's new with you? Thanks for coming on.
Let's see, what's new in my world? And thanks for having me, by the way. What's new in my world? About 15 inches of snow, 20-degree weather here in Boston. Tomorrow, a sore back from shoveling for 2 hours.
Got to get a snowblower, man.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, lately in Boston, it's been brutal past couple of years. I think. Is that where you're from, Boston? Is that right? Is that what you said?
I'm originally from California, but I live in Boston now.
Right.
Been here for 7 years, so yeah. At this point, I probably should have invested in a snowblower, but when I buy a home, that'll be my first purchase.
Oh, there you go. Little goals. Until then, you'll just have a sore back. Well, thank you for coming on, and I want to say, what are you laughing at, Ed?
You just gotta dig at people, Chris. You're such an old man, Chris.
Yeah,
curmudgeonly old man, negative. Cholo.
The scary thing is how effortlessly it comes to me, and without any real thought.
Yeah, I know.
It's truly, as you know from off mic, it is how
I am.
On mic, on and off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just how I am. I really am. Kind of
just
a jerk.
Bad guy.
Yeah, I'm just a bad guy.
With some sweet sunglasses on your head.
Yeah, I found these outside. These are pretty awesome. Concord, baby. So it's the year-end show. It's we just started 2018 off to a bang. So I wanted to just very briefly we talked about what's going on, but I figure we could just kind of jump right into it if that's cool with you guys. I mean, I figured we talk about some of the big stories of the year, some predictions for 2018. We can also, if we want, quickly review some of the predictions from last year, see how they went. If there's any other news that you guys have to talk about, I'm sure that will also come up. I know you guys, you little chatty little folks as you are. We can, we'll talk about whatever you guys want. So, but first, I wanted to talk about 2017 year in beer. What to you was the beer of the year and why? And the why can be for any reason. I just ask that it's somehow the 2017 beer of the year. So, yeah. Are you just now looking at the outline for the first time?
Yeah.
And
I forgot about this question.
To be fair, you weren't truly asked on a
No,
half hour ago.
it's
You were
true.
asked on more like 28, 29 hours ago.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Why don't you guys skip
Well,
me for now, and
it's
I'll come
funny.
up with something.
most people would just point, but you want to... what's up, Jerry? How about you? What was your beer of the year? Do you have one? Do you want me to go first?
I think I would have to lead with I thought about this. There wasn't something that like took over the market from out of state or like multiple markets like the Grapefruit Sculpin did a couple of years ago. Or
It doesn't need to be a Chicago one.
And I didn't
Yeah.
want. I was trying to think of outside, just globally what, and I would have to say that for me, the story that is the IPA, the GABF gold medal winner, Hailstorm Prairie Madness.
That's the beer of the year for you?
I would say so.
Are you?
Because
And why is that?
I would just say because it's that IPA that is bucking the trend of the hazy IPA not only that, it's not even what a lot of the other GABF gold medal winners were recently, which is the super West Coast style and super dry and super bitter.
No malt character,
Right.
really.
So it's it was just a surprising choice, and it's a great beer, but it just bucks the trend of both of those, and it won the
A return to maybe balance in the category, you're saying maybe, or at least in the
for the people
judges?
that judged it, at least, yeah.
Yeah. Which is probably a lot of different people drank that beer at GBF who judged it. I mean, by the time you win a medal in a category as big as IPA there, a lot of people have drank that beer and liked it. Interesting. I would say, for me, a little twist on that, I was thinking about it a lot. I asked around the store too. We had a couple people. Some people said one guy, Steven, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, said War Pigs Lazurite was his. He thought it was interesting that it was done at a contract brewery. Been selling like hotcakes, like consistently at our shop, 10 cases a week for months. Interesting branding, can, kind of a murdered out can type thing. But anyway,
Have those sales slowed down at all?
they're still doing really great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are all their brands doing well? They have 3 out, right?
All are doing well. Lazurite does the best.
And what's the hazy one? That's Foggy Geezer?
Foggy Geezer, yeah. But yeah, so my beer of the year, which was really, it's kind of an example of just like where things are going, and also an example of how I was right with my prediction last year, was Sierra Nevada's hazy little thing IPA.
Come on. Give me a break.
And why do you say that?
That's your
Ed?
beer of the year?
Why do you say that?
Oh, because I just can't believe it. It just came out. And in the entire year, that's what you're picking as your best favorite beer.
I didn't say favorite beer. I didn't say best beer.
Oh, just the beer of the year.
Beer of the year.
This is like Times Person of the Year. Like
Right.
how
I see.
the president
Most
can win it
influential- Okay,
Right.
despite...
All right, sorry, Chris.
I went the same route.
Go ahead.
too.
Go ahead.
The reason being is this is a brewery that probably took 20 years to put out an IPA at all, and they're putting out a hazy IPA, and it's just showing, New Belgium's doing the same thing. So many people have put out, the big boys have put out these unfiltered beers, hazy beers, just how quick these big guys are to jump on trends now. And it's just trend chasing, continue to move away from flagships and into, seasonality, one-offs, always something different, something new, kind of like the detergents, new and improved. Oh, now I have to try this one. One of those deals. And I think that's just the best example I could think of how this hazy beer thing has truly gone mainstream and is being picked up by all the craft breweries. So that's why I chose that one. I got a thumbs up from you, Ed, so you've kind of...
I understand.
Okay.
I'm with you. I totally respect that opinion. And that
Okay.
selection.
Can I give a
Makes
little
sense.
response to that, however? A
Yeah.
year ago, there was much ballyhoo about Sierra Nevada releasing Sidecar, I believe it's called, the Orange Pale Ale, when it was just trying to jump on the fruited, hoppy beer.
Totally.
And that, Chris probably has the numbers at his fingertips. I don't believe that beer did a lot in the market, and no one's talking about it. I don't see it around. So that also feels to me like just sort of a big guy desperately trying to also stay relevant.
Totally. I mean, and that to me is a big story, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a huge story.
And that's kind of what I mean by this is the beer that exemplifies that. I mean, this could end up being the Pepsi Clear that nobody cares about. It might be the biggest thing that ever was put into a can.
And it's interesting that, I think you just made a brilliant comparison.
Oh,
Well,
thank
I
you.
withdraw that because I don't want you to.
We're not into stories
Oh.
of the year, by the way. Yet.
Oh, that's well, yeah. That's so much more interesting than beer of the year. But I mean, and they also sort of tie in together, right? But I mean, the comparison between something like Pepsi Clear and hazy IPA, as well as Pepsi Clear and a company like Sierra Nevada, now in the position of having to keep up. Right. I mean, they're, as we've probably discussed many times before, those are the breweries that are having a tough go of it right now, and it's a little hard to watch.
How about
Don't-
what's up,
don't
Chris?
forget that Sierra also started the year by recalling a whole bunch of brands, and I think Sidecar was one of them. They had a glass issue. Remember?
Oh
That
yeah,
was-
yep.
That was the first few weeks of the year, so I sort of wonder how much that played into to the point about Sidecar. How much that played into its future success,
Its demise.
in 2017.
Certainly a
Or
bad way to
lack-
get started.
lack
yeah.
thereof.
What was your beer of the year, Josh?
I I'll be honest, I thought a lot more about the story of the year on the drive down here since you invited me on 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But just since we started this conversation,
Everyone knows at this point.
I'm going to go with a tie between All Day IPA and 805 from Firestone Walker.
All
Just
right.
basically the broader theme being the volume beers that are sending these sort of, I guess what we could say mid-size. I mean, they're very large craft breweries at this point, but and also in another sense, they're sort of like the mid-sized craft brewery, but like that kicks them up to the large brewery. It's like if you are going to make that leap, you need the volume beer. You're not going to just do it on
Yeah.
an awesome portfolio.
For those of you listening online, or I'm sorry, via podcast, you're not listening to last year's Beer of the Year. This is not Doug Valicki saying that that it's the Beer of the Year for the exact same reason. It was literally,
did he say
all
it?
day?
Oh, really?
He said it was all day, and he said for the exact same reason, and that you're going to continue to see it in 2017. It's funny. That
Oh yeah,
it's a
well,
continued
and
kind of thing.
it just I think Chris just wrote a story about this, about how Founders has just like kicked it up to the next level, and it's like this brewery is growing like a weed, and we're going to see more of it in 2018. We're going to see it in gas stations. We're going to see it in 72 packs in Costco, and it's like these beers are the engines of these companies as they make that leap into the big time.
Right. How about you, Chris? Beer of the Year.
Well, I will stick with the theme of sessionability, and I will say Dogfish Head's Sequench Ale, which is low alcohol, 4.9%. I guess sort of shameless plug for us. It happened to also be our beer product of the year that we gave it an award at our conference. And the reason why we gave it the award, and the reason why I'm picking it for this podcast and for this radio show tonight, is because I think it is one of those beers that really does have the potential to cross over and attract, a totally new consumer and bring them into craft. And it is really unique. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of different iterations of a hazy IPA that are being released to capitalize on a trend. And, here's Dogfish Head brewing with limes and sea salt and, all these sort of funky ingredients and producing a low calorie, low carbohydrate,
Low alcohol
session sour beer, low alcohol session sour beer that, oh, by the way, helped push the company to 20% growth this year. So,
and it's an excellent beer.
I didn't know that. That's incredible,
it's a
Chris.
great beer, yeah.
It really drove sales.
oh yeah, it was a big catalyst for their growth this year. Now they also entered, I think, 7 new states, which accounted for, I think, 30% of their new growth. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about two of their brands, Sequench and Flesh and Blood, really drove a lot of the growth for them this year. So it for me, it is the beer product of the year.
That's cool.
Not only for myself, but I think just in the category.
I really love that beer, Chris. And what's interesting to me is that I feel like for like 3, 4, maybe even a little longer years, maybe 5, I feel like people have been casting about trying to nail that session IPA, different breweries, larger breweries especially, and no one's really done it. And that's the first one to me that really sort of seems to have sort of threaded the needle and like could be the one that really takes off.
Yes, I also love that they seem to have, Dogfish Head seems to have managed to stay true to what they do without, and also, put out new products that are reaching new consumers and new tastes, and that it's working for them. A lot of other breweries, we kind of harp on them for really kind of abandoning their roots, and I like that Dogfish Head seems to be working within who they've always been while still innovating, and that to me is really encouraging and something that I just really like to see. So that's cool. They're kind of keeping true to who they've always been, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the points.
Sequench is right in their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Why they're able to do it, whereas some other ones haven't been able to. Think just because they've always been down that road.
Yeah, but they've also kind of been counter to things as well. They're not just chasing I don't know. They're kind of doing it their own way. Sea Quench is definitely a Dogfish Head beer. If you said that there was 6-pack cans nationally of a black lime and whatever, it's not just lime. It's like this crazy black lime and this and that. You would say that's probably a Dogfish Head beer, or it'd be one of your first couple guesses. And that's kind of what I meant by that. Let's keep it moving. We're going to take a quick break for maybe like 60 seconds or so. Lot to cover. We're going to talk about some other shows that are here on Lumpen Radio, and then we'll be back with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by my all-star panel, Chris Vernari, Ed Marr, Jerry Nelson, Josh Noel. Producer Serge is nailing it tonight. Well done in some compromised situations. He's like jumping around, having to do this and that.
Jim Cotta.
Yeah.
All over the
definitely.
studio.
Serge Cotta. Definitely in the house. So well done. So let's get to the stories of the year. I asked everyone to come up with a story. Hopefully, Ed, you skipped the beer of the year. Maybe you have something that you cared about. Was there anything that you cared about this year?
Yes. This year, Chris, I think to me, 2017 was the year of the contract brewer. People trying to find extra capacity to brew more beer to complement what they're doing in their own facility, as well as brands like you discussed, the War Pigs, the Three Floyds Mikkeller collab brewery, contracting beer here in Chicago and Wisconsin, and no one seeming to care that it's a contract brew. Although some people do say they are concerned about how Pseudo Sue is being brewed
From Toppling Goliath, yeah.
Yeah, being brewed in Florida, and it doesn't taste the same.
No longer. The Pseudo Sue in Chicago is now Iowa made.
Now it's back in. Oh yeah, it's. I'm sorry. It's where?
Iowa.
Made in Iowa. Decorah.
But it was for a long time. Yeah. In Florida.
But it went to Florida. People said there was a difference. But I think people also in Chicago have used the contract breweries, at least in Chicago, as a way to augment their production and try to sell more beer, get into the marketplace. A number of breweries I know are contracting in Chicago still as they try to open up their new facilities.
A lot of the hot brands were contracting this year. Microphone until for a part of the year was contracting. You've got Saint Laurent who's contracting. Mm-hmm. You have Hop Butcher who's contracting. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are all some hot breweries on the geek side of things anyway here in the Chicago market.
Sip of Sunshine.
Yep. Oh yeah, there you go. There's the big one. The Lawson Sip of Sunshine is a huge one that contracts and has for years.
But right? I think to a lot of breweries and to a lot of brewers, like contract brewing was like a negative thing, right? And I think it's finally widely accepted. And I don't think consumers care that much as long as the beer is done well, tastes great, the quality is good.
And there's
Here's a question for you, Ed.
Yeah.
If the stigma around contract brewing no longer exists.
Well, it exists, but it's not as negative as it used to be. I think it's tipped over to the 51%.
Okay. So if it's not as strong as it used to be, and if your story of the year is contract brewing and more brewers being okay with that, more brewers exploring that, why is BrewHub having such a difficult time?
I knew you were going to go there.
Out their nationwide network.
My answer for that is that I think BrewHub was looking for the super large regional breweries or those larger breweries in states to become customers for them, where they were thinking too big because they created that system at a time when everyone was expanding and getting new breweries, new facilities. Maybe if they got a contract from Lagunitas or New Belgium before they decided to build their giant breweries, they would be doing well.
I would.
But also I say that there's a glut of breweries.
No, don't. Interrupt Jerry. He doesn't talk enough on the show.
Jerry,
unlike
go.
you.
Sorry about that.
I was going to come up with the stigma of contract brewing point. I guess I want to back up a little bit. Is that there was a lot of contract breweries for a while that were only on paper, and they didn't have their own brewery. And those kind of breweries, the breweries that we're talking about right now do have their own facilities, and then they're adding some additional capacity at contract breweries. By and large, this is like the common
By and
thing.
large,
Yeah.
So we're talking. I think there's still a stigma of the ones that do not. They only exist on paper. You don't know actually who owns it. All of a sudden, a brand pops up in the market, and those are the ones that I in my opinion,
Those breweries generally suck. but my thought was also that because there are a lot
Mikkeller,
there are a lot more breweries out there. There are a lot more breweries that actually have capacity then. So in Chicago, a lot of people opened up with some 30, maybe 50 barrel systems with a new production facility on top of a pre-existing facility, and they didn't reach their targets or numbers. So it's a pretty complex reason why there's capacity available right now.
I think you're totally right, Ed. I agree 100%. I think guys are going, it's a pretty, no matter where you're brewing, it's probably a fairly tight-knit community there. And if you're going to go and start brewing on contract, you're probably going to ask your buddies first.
Yeah.
One, because you know them and trust them. Two, because they need the help. They've got capacity, and you can help them. And I do think that Brew Hub was trying to get the next, the Sam Adams model, where someone went national via contract. And even the way they were like geographically positioning these hubs, it says, oh, you want to break into the California market? We have one there. You want to be in the Florida market? We have one there. And I just don't think people realize that scaling at that size, that rapid scaling was going to be, it may not be realistic these days. And yeah,
having been to the Brew Hub in Florida, I do know they have some of the paper companies too. So that's kind of they did do Toppling Goliath and
Cigar City.
Cigar City, but they also did have some ones that I had never heard of, and then I did some just quick iPhone research and going, I can't find out who these guys are. Well,
they had some of their own brands too. I mean, they were trying to sort of launch their own brands, which I think is a smart hedge against contracting. But we've got also two examples right here in the Midwest that we haven't talked about. If Brew Hub had maybe hit their plan earlier, it maybe would have worked. It was incredibly ambitious to open contract breweries all over the country. And Ed, I agree, spot on. The idea was regional. It was a good idea. They weren't able to pull it together in time. I mean, we've got Great Central here, which is making the War Pigs and Maplewood and what else? And Beguile, right.
And their own stuff.
Right, and their own stuff, and they seem to be doing quite well. You've got Octopi up in Wisconsin, which seems, I think they're making a dozen brands.
Yep.
The other...
Yeah, I think you're right. You had a lot of these other Brew Hub-like, organizations, maybe not with the same idea, but, guys who set out to have a contract focus, opening up at the same time, in some cases probably in the areas that Brew Hub wanted to go to.
And another part of contract brewing, and I think...
crowded marketplace, even for contractors.
For everyone. Yeah. The idea that the sort of the mainstreaming of contract brewing, I think it almost extends into a new realm now where you've got Oscar Blues making Cigar City. Does that matter where the beer is? Cigar City isn't making that beer. Oscar Blues is making that beer. Does it matter? Is that just another form of contract brewing? And that's why Brew Hub is no longer making Cigar City. And that was another issue, to go back to Brew Hub real quick, is it wasn't perhaps a super sustainable model. Toppling Goliath and Cigar City, both huge scores. However, both are going to end because both had, next level plans.
Yeah, stopgap.
Exactly.
I'm about to sneeze.
Bless you.
There we go. Well, we've got a lot of other stories of the year, and man, just in talking, I may have just had a last-second change of my story of the year, but we'll see. Ed, yours was contract brew. How about you, Fern? What was your story of the year for 2017?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the least sexy of all the ones that I'm sure we'll get to, but I think in general, mine is just the continued decline of beer category health overall, not just craft. I mean, certainly we know that if you look at just sort of the top line figure for craft, it's slowed to single digits. And there's a lot of brands on the long tail that are doing quite well, and it's really not fair to paint everyone with such a broad brush. But I think in general, if you take a couple of steps back and look at the beer category, kind of having our lunch eaten by wine and spirits, and now we're looking at legalized recreational marijuana. And I think 6 states, California just legalized it as of Jan 1. So, you have all these sort of competing substances that are, I would say, fighting or taking away from, the opportunities that one might have to always drink a beer. And it's a fight for high or intoxication or whatever you want to call it. And it's definitely having an impact on the overall health of the beer category. So
share of impairment. You're fighting for
share
of impairment.
Share of brain cells.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that the big sort of overarching 30,000 foot storyline this year is what are folks in the industry going to do to get the beer category back to positive growth. The entire category. So that would be my big one, and I'll let you guys riff on that for a bit.
I think that honestly, most of the stories of the year, not knowing exactly what they're going to be, are all going to stem from the one that you just brought up, Chris. I think that it is just overall subtly seen every single day certainly at the retail level on both sides. I think it's seen every day at the supplier side, both the producer and the wholesale. That in this is a craft beer show, but the growth is slowing, and that the pressure is coming from the big guys because they're really hurting. They're really looking for an area to grow. And we're a small slice of the pie, but we're a growing slice of the pie, and they want in. And
that's a good point, is that even though beer is hurting, the macro brands are really hurting, and craft is slowing, craft is still growing.
Yeah.
Right. But where would we be without craft? If the industry has lost 35 million barrels to wine and spirits over the last 20 years, which is the statistic that was trotted out a whole bunch of times this year, how bad would it be if craft didn't take off?
Has anyone sort of been able to, I've never heard in sort of concrete terms how that works. Like, what beer is someone giving up, and what are they drinking in its place? Is it like they're giving up a Coors Light and they're drinking a rum and Coke instead?
I mean, I don't know that it's going to be like a 1-to-1. I think, if you take a look at it, it's really just a situation where you have consumers that are more willing to experiment and try and be more promiscuous with other categories. Whereas, maybe 20 years ago, you had consumers that identified themselves as a wine drinker or a spirits drinker or a beer drinker. Those consumers don't really exist anymore. They're just drinkers, and it all depends upon the occasion.
So I think it is share of throat. I think how much booze is being consumed, and then divided up by category, and the slice of the pie that beer took up is shrinking. And I do think that, craft beer, if anything, you talk about this armada coming to take us over. I got to talk about that.
No, one specific person talks about that.
So,
and in fact, that's my story of the year.
Yeah. So okay. So we'll get to that, and we can segue right into that. You can talk about how that's a problem, but I do think that the very nature of craft beer does lead people to experiment and be, I think you said promiscuous, Chris. I think that's a good term for it. If you're going to try a bourbon barrel aged stout and a cognac barrel aged stout and a hazy IPA and a super sour barrel fermented stout and an amber ale and whatever ale, why wouldn't you try this kind of wine or that kind of wine or this kind of spirit? I mean, I love bourbon aged things. Why wouldn't I try a bourbon? I love wine barrel aged things, or this tastes like wine. Why wouldn't I try a wine? Or I'm just realizing I like a wider spectrum of flavors. Why don't I just keep seeing what else I like? I think experimentation, it's not like, well, I experiment, I'll try any kind of beer, but it has to be a beer. It can't be a wine or a fortified wine or something like that. So I think that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that at our conference last month, and that was one of the questions I asked Total Wine and More, because we were talking about this idea that for years craft brewers took the ABV of their products higher and higher and higher, and I sort of said, well, at some point when you're looking at the cost of a 14 or 15% ABV bomber versus just buying in at a low end of a bourbon, like, does the consumer ever start to consider that, especially when the product that you're selling them on the beer side is some bourbon barrel-aged offering anyways? Like, why wouldn't you consider just, going straight for the bourbon itself?
I remember 2 years ago, we figured out ounce for ounce that the 50-50 Eclipse in Elijah Craig barrels was more expensive than the Elijah Craig. Ounce for ounce. It was kind of silly.
Can I throw a wrench into this at all? Is it possible that maybe the reduction in alcohol consumption is related to the evisceration of the working class and consumers in general who maybe spent a disproportionate amount of their income on alcohol or have less money to spend, or they had the same amount of money to spend in 20 years ago that they do today.
Yeah, but the market is kicking butt, man.
I mean, wouldn't bargain basement?
Just kidding.
Wouldn't bargain basement beers be killing it though? Although they are
still killing it. I'm just wondering if you did not grow in 20 years your income with inflation, are you just not able to buy as much alcohol?
Well, I think Chris, the host, nailed it. I mean, right? It's just that's good things for Keystone and Natural Light and
are those
good old hams?
Hams is growing.
Hams is up.
So I just wonder if that's part of it.
It reaches round to pat self on back.
Just a thought.
Yeah. So the segue didn't work, but let's just throw it to you.
Oh, well, I want to just say that though we talk about these things in terms of this is a problem for the industry, this is troubling for business, this is great for consumers. Like, the people who define themselves as by drinking one thing and probably one brand within one thing, are the fact that people are promiscuous, that's great for the people. And I'm ultimately pro-people. And I think it's great that people are trying so many things and getting all over the place.
All right, and why don't you just go right into your story of the year?
It's a tie. Real quick, hazy IPA. I think that there's been a real fundamental shift in that really came to a head in 2017 with what people want in an IPA, how IPAs are made, and I don't think there's any going back. To some degree, yes, hazy IPAs are going to be like something of a fad, something we'll look back at and sort of laugh at some point maybe. But more
maybe the profile.
Exactly, yeah. I think the profile has changed and that is an evolution. And I think
fruitier, sweeter, less bitter.
Juicier.
Juicier.
Yep, all those things.
And it opened up a whole new world of puns, which is really what the industry needed.
Exactly.
There were too many hop puns. Now we just need
juice puns.
And it's probably going to, bring some more drinkers into the category. I mean, I literally can give a end of the spectrum hazy IPA, meaning very low bitterness, real like mellow mouthfeel, to someone who does not like beer, and they will like it every single time. So that might be great thing for in terms of reversing all the entire conversation we just had.
And people years ago who said they hate IPAs now start drinking these New England style, and they're way into it.
I will tell you, it makes Green Flash West Coast IPA taste so darn good to me though right now. I love
old
that beer.
School. What was your other beer of the year?
My other story of the year.
Story of the year. I'm sorry.
Was the Wicked Weed Sale to good old Anheuser-Busch InBev. obviously I'm a little biased based on my book, which digs into all this, but I didn't really exactly have an end to my book. And then the Wicked Weed sale happened, and there was that crush of reaction. And it's like, I have the end of my book. But in my theory on this whole thing, excuse me, is that, AB went on its 9 brewery shopping spree before Wicked Weed. There was plenty of outrage along the way, Goose Island, Elysian, 10 Barrel, and then it had sort of settled in where I think people had just sort of made peace with it. They bought Four Peaks in Arizona, who cares? They bought Breckenridge, not the sexiest Colorado brand. They bought Karbach in Houston, which is pretty much meaningless to anyone outside of Houston. And it had just sort of settled in, and then, holy cow, Wicked Weed. And that sale, which I think was in May, sort of reignited the whole discussion, and I think really put an exclamation mark on the whole big beer is going to, one way or another, commandeer craft beer.
And the cool kids started to feel it. They started to get a little worried.
Big time. The cool kids did not care
feel
about
safe.
Karbach.
They were
With
not.
Wicked
they didn't
Weed,
feel safe anymore.
Exactly. It was Wicked Weed sort of like reignited the whole thing and put. I would argue that was the most outrage came with that, and the most backlash and the most sort of soul searching about what it all means.
Yeah.
Or Elysian was a big one too.
True.
Maybe less so here, but just in my reporting, that was the one. Like Bob Peace, the head of the Brewers Association, that to him was the one. Was like, oh my God, if they're buying Elysian, something profound is happening here. And I think Wicked Weed was. Like I said, the exclamation mark. It was like that was there's no going back now. AB can do what it wants, and it will do what it wants.
Jerry, what's your story of the year?
Well, Josh sort of stole my
Your thunder?
story of the year, but I want to emphasize that it's the juicy IPA that is taking over
not the hazy
of the world, not the hazy.
Juicy, right?
We
So
don't want
the
to
profile.
emphasize hazy. We want to emphasize that
Juice.
these are the juice. Like, if you can make a clear beer that tastes like these,
Juice bombs.
juice bombs, go for it. It's almost impossible, but
Yeah.
No, we did that with the Midway IPA last year. We started off just kind of making them juicy without being hazy.
And people didn't like it.
interesting.
And they
went
didn't
back.
like it that much because it wasn't cloudy.
Well,
Wasn't
or maybe
hazy.
because it didn't taste as good. How do you know?
Well, I'm pretty sure that it's one of the best hazeless juice bombs made in 2000.
I guess I'm trying to steer people away from just just going for the haze and nothing else. But
Yeah.
But do you think that they're here to stay? These juice bombs.
yeah, I think so. And it's obvious with all the big breweries jumping in, especially later in the year. The ones coming on board, that it was, it's definitely going to be something that's going to be here for a while. I don't think it's going to fade at all.
Well, people
Yeah.
used to make fun of IPAs, double IPAs.
Yeah.
They're making fun of. We made fun of New England style IPAs.
I mean, we still do.
I know.
I mean, come on. It's all about the dust, though. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean,
Yeah.
the dust is supreme.
Hazy. Some people would say that dusty and hazy are synonyms.
True.
Not the Dust Brothers, but other people would say that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say for me, it's the story of the year was, I just hearing some of this, I do think the overall increased competition, this general feeling of a crowded stuff is getting crowded, is definitely the story of the year. But what kind of relates to that is tap rooms. I think on premise and tap rooms have become the cool place to drink beer. I mean,
They're always the coolest places
well,
to drink
yeah,
beer.
the cool
What are you
place,
talking about?
but also
no, they have not always
arguably
been the coolest places to
the
drink
best
beer.
place to drink beer.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Obviously, I mean, there you go. I mean, arguably they're the coolest. Arguably they're the best. I certainly think they offer the brewers and the drinkers a lot of great. There's a lot of benefit to it. So I think there's a reason that
Unless
they're
you're in
doing
a
it.
really bad brewery.
Well, then, but it's still going to be, I suppose, better than not having a tap room. It's always going to be better.
Not always.
Okay. I mean, unless you have a really
Have
terrible.
you been to Rockford?
No.
Sorry about that, Rockford.
But I mean, for the brewery, the margins are unreal. They're great. They're excellent. Way better than going through the retail chain, the 3-tier system. Even better than if you are self-distilling. It's even better if you can bring someone to you. Second, for the drinker, I think it's great because they have a connection, a direct connection to the producer of the beer. And, it helps them kind of grow their loyalty for the beers and kind of see where it comes from and get a feel for these people. And I think that is that's good. I think that it's funny. My prediction last year, and we'll get to this, was more and more special releases will happen at the source, i.e. brewery and brew pub directly. That is complete. I mean, special releases are now taproom only, brew pub only. That is where they happen. Very few exceptions.
Yeah, and that was Mike Strong's prediction from last year.
It was mine as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it was mine. Oh, yeah, it was his too. You're right. Mike Strong said a move towards smaller on-premise only, non-brew pub breweries as the bulk of new breweries opening. So there you go. He and I were pretty much aligned. But I do think that now even these tap rooms, I think we're going to see maybe a bubble bursting. It used to be every tap room here in Chicago, you open a tap room, it was going to be super crowded regardless. And I think that those days are numbered and that there's also going to be, the quality will matter and more and other things as well. I mean, what else you bring to the table in addition to your beers, perhaps. So I think that it's just also plays into this kind of tightening thing. It feels a little more crowded now. It's not if you have a tap room, it's the only game in town and people are going to do it. There's a lot of tap rooms now.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of tap rooms really working to not just, have great beer, but they're drawing people in for other things.
Yoga and
I was about to say,
it's true.
That freaks
and
me out.
I drew the line right away with everybody. It's like, we are not doing yoga at our place. It's just not
think
gonna
about,
happen.
honestly, Jerry, think about someone like me who's trying to draw people in, but my
Yoga?
overhead is like just for my cost of goods is just so much higher. I mean, to me, it's really scary if you have guys who are also breweries. But then again, you guys have your own disadvantages as well. I mean, you serve Unane beer. I mean, who's going to want to go get that? Just kidding. I literally have one of your beers on right now.
Damn.
Two of them on. We have one Unane and one Hubbard's Cave.
Chris,
Yeah, just joking.
have you considered yoga?
Yeah. No, I
I
haven't.
think you need to start doing some yoga, man.
Nothing
Just
against
relax.
yoga at breweries.
I
Nothing
do
against
think
yoga.
there's some sort of wrestling thing going on.
That's awesome, though. Not live wrestling.
Jerry, that's what should be started. Wrestling. in
Like
breweries.
actual, like collegiate,
Yeah, wrestling.
like
or just
collegiate wrestling.
Actually,
or WWF style. whatever it's called.
Chicago went through a huge. I don't think this is a cool term anymore, but midget wrestling phase back in I don't know it was the 80s or the 90s. Like all the D-bag bars in the Gold Coast were doing midget wrestling.
Interesting.
So that might come back. Now it would be
At
dwarf
the
wrestling.
D-bag
now.
tap rooms.
I do have to mention, now that we've said that and everyone's like, what am I listening to? Who said that? Well, let me at least tell you that Josh Noel just said on WLPN LP Chicago 105.5 FM Lumpen Radio, and I forget where I was going to go from there. But anyway.
Actually, I wrote a story about this. I'm going to tweet it after the show.
Okay. So, to me, it's just that things are feeling a little more crowded. So I do see here, it looks like somebody added, if there's time, it might be cool to talk about CBMTRA and the impact it will have on breweries of varying sizes.
That was me.
Go for it.
The Craft Beverage Modernization and Tax Reform Act.
Oh, good. I needed a nap.
Oh, there you go.
Is it all making sense now?
Sure.
I think that was a pretty big win for the industry. Tax reform is something that the Brewers Association and the Beer Institute have been fighting for quite some time. And, while the tax plan, everybody's going to fall on a different side of the aisle on their views on the tax reform. There are certainly some arguments to be made about, whether or not this is a truly good thing for small brewery businesses. I do think, the fact that they were able to figure out a way to lower excise taxes, even if it's only for a couple years.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sunsets after 2 years, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's still huge. This is something that, when I was reporting this story out, a couple of years ago, when the BA and the BI, the Brewers Association and the Beer Institute, finally came to terms and got together on one bill as opposed to competing bills, and they were talking about how, hey, this, now that we're unified, this has an actual chance of passing, and a much greater chance than it ever did before, tax reform, that is, of excise tax reform. And, everybody was very, very skeptical. People that I talked to in Washington that, worked on the Hill, told me privately that, it's great that they got together, but this thing's not going anywhere. Realistically, it's never going to pass. The phrase "this is never going to pass" was said to me so many times just 2 years ago. So I think it's remarkable that it was included. I don't know. That's a pretty big story in my mind.
What do you feel about some of the counter articles that came out about how many more people are going to die as a result of this tax break? We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to get your take on it.
Well, yeah, then you start to go through and analyze all of the other ways in which the tax bill could harm businesses, harm individuals, hurt. There's things that there's so many unknowns, things that we just could never foresee happening, and the impact it could have on the beer industry. So I try not to think too much about that and just look at kind of, what most small brewers have, which is 50% reduction in their excise tax bills every year, and that's
every year for 2 years, while the millionaires get to keep their tax breaks forever.
Yeah,
Good job,
as
GOP.
a small brewer, I would have preferred this bill not to have been passed.
Why is that?
Is that because you're a cholo of the people?
Oh, yeah, no, it was getting passed.
Doesn't do
one way or
anything.
the other.
Yeah, you're right. They've been working on it for years. That's great. But to have it associated with the tax bill that was passed is really one of the worst things about this bill. It just doesn't have any sense of victory about it, or any sense of justice or anything. It's just, especially for us, we're so small. It's meaningless. The numbers, the amount of tax refund or tax relief we're getting is garbage. And I would prefer. I would actually prefer to pay double the excise taxes if this bill and the whole bill wasn't passed.
Yeah.
Well,
So you would have preferred that the industry just fell on its sword and said, "Look, we disagree in principle with so many things in this bill that we don't even want to be associated with it."
Well,
honestly,
that's fair.
I actually, you know what? I would advocate
Right,
that.
you would advocate, but you don't think that. That's that.
No one will listen to me, but
that
whatever.
Bill, let me. That will never pass.
Well,
to kind of paraphrase what people were saying.
for me and Ed, the passage of this bill, just on the excise tax part, is maybe a month's worth of excise tax, or a month's worth of rent in excise tax, essentially.
So neither of you are going to be able to like hire another person or
Yeah, the
whatever.
reasons they sold it. For us, but there are other breweries that are much larger. Maybe they
The ones that
will
are
hire someone.
Sierra Nevada, they're going to get a few $1 million out of it each year. Yeah. So that they could.
So the 1% of the craft beer
really
world
reinvest
really get a lot of value out of this. But
and then
the remaining
the bigger
99%.
beer companies make out even better, right?
No,
Not
there is a
necessarily.
cap on the excise tax. It's up to 60,000 barrels is the reduction. After that, it is, for any brewery, the first 60,000 barrels have the reduction.
Yeah, to 350. So that's $210,000 for a 60,000 barrel brewery, and then beyond that, it's what I think $18 to $16 for companies that are larger.
And then it
But,
stops at some point after that too, right?
Well, I think you have breweries that produce fewer than 2 million barrels get the first 60,000. But if you produce more, then you don't.
I can feel the people fast
Yeah,
forwarding right
there's-
now. So let me just
there's a big chunk in there.
let me just say I wanted
Boobies!
I wanted to quickly go through last year's predictions because believe me, we are going to bring this up next year. And last year, I'll just go through quickly. Chris said, that's me, not Chris Fernari, more and more special releases will happen at the source, i.e. the brewery brew pub directly. Ding, ding, ding. Absolutely right. I'm always right. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone knows that. Ed, you said can wars. As more cans enter the market, 4-pack versus 6-pack pricing battles will ensue. You then now added just in the past, 10 minutes? You
Yeah.
were asked to be on this show 10 minutes ago. You added to the outline, did I say this? The answer is you at least typed it. And Jason Klein from Spiteful said, big beer goes with the ground game. You're going to see Carbach, Devil's Backbone, Golden Road, Four Peaks, Hop Valley, Terrapin, blah, blah, blah. Others scale immensely this year. The buyouts were the easy part. And Doug Valicki, the beer cruncher, the beer aficionado, said...
Can we go back on Jason's real quick?
Yeah.
That wasn't accurate.
Yeah.
I love Jason. I love Spiteful. However, the lesson that was really reinforced in 2017 is that I think these guys figured out, these guys meaning basically AB and Miller and I guess Constellation, that the national plays don't work, that you really got to be really deliberate and measured and probably ultimately regional is how these things play out.
Yeah, they kind of took a bath with Ballast Point this year. Constellation did.
And Goose as a national brand is struggling now.
Yeah.
You can't just shoot craft beer into the universe and expect it to do well.
Which
They
I
thought they
think-
could do that, and they couldn't.
I think Don from Revolution was on this year or early in the year, or maybe late last year, and quietly kind of suggested that he thought that was going to happen, that you're filling the pipes by going to all these new markets, but are you going to then be pulling through and refilling the pipes? You can move a lot of beer by going into a new grocery chain, but they then have to sell it and you have to, resupply it. So it's very easy to get an initial push like you were with Golden Road and stuff like that. Anyway, Doug was saying...
Ramen noodles?
Yeah, ramen noodles. So Doug was talking about ramen noodles. He was also talking about, he said that the breakthrough in consumer education over the importance of storing beer cold. I don't know if that quite happened this year. He also said more new creative packaging options as Bombers evolved to 6-packs. Now 6-packs will evolve into greater value to consumers. I would say that did happen.
Yeah. 15 packs, 22-ounce cans.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I know
he was sort of telegraphing the whole Revolution strategy, wasn't he?
he definitely was. And one of the employees at our shop, Max.
Was Doug working there then?
Yeah, I think he was.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Max said that he thought that Death Star was the beer of the year for taking the barrel-aged beer and going into canned 4-packs.
I considered that as my answer, and also for the reason that it was so delicious and
Oh, it was so good.
so barrel forward and so booze forward, and just
Yeah.
like it was just beautiful stout. It was beautiful barrel. It was beautiful booze, and like that, I want that return to that because can we talk
man.
about pastry stouts? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Ooh,
Pastry stouts. You look Jerry. Mike, Dust Brother Mike Strong said, "Yeah, there is a fan. It's not turned off. We're about to take a break." Mike said we're going to see a move towards smaller, on-premise only, non-brew pub breweries as the bulk of new breweries opening, and I think that is also fairly accurate. It seems. I think a lot of those were the case there.
I think. What about my prediction? Was that seem accurate?
Not really. I don't know.
No?
Did it? I mean, 4-pack versus 6-pack pricing battles. I haven't really.
I think
seen
everything
that.
was actually all pricing is going down.
Yeah, I think it's definitely
Yeah.
a race to
and
the
that'll
bottom.
be something really interesting. And I'd love to hear what Chris Fernari thinks about that. That pricing will be a very interesting issue in 2018.
Yeah, well, no, we're talking about 2018
sorry,
predictions
sorry.
is after the break. We have to listen to some music. We have to turn on a friggin'
the tease,
fan.
the big tease.
Open the front door.
Let's
get
just
some
open
cold
the
air.
front door and
Yeah.
get some 0-degree air in here. We will be back in a few minutes with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. We are on the air, everyone, so you are on mic. As I'll say, everything you say is being broadcast. So if you're saying something you don't feel like saying, maybe stop. I gave you several warnings, but that's fine. My guests are Ed Marzewski, Jerry Nelson, Josh Noel. I usually say Noel, and Chris Fernari. A lot of nice bald heads in the room today.
Glistening,
I like it.
gleaming.
Yes. And Ed's toupee is looking feasible.
Thank you. I got
Passable.
I got it in Evergreen Park.
Passable.
He takes tips from Trump, I guess.
Yeah, and it looks
My hero.
passable today. So let's look at the predictions. We looked at last year's predictions, last year's end show predictions. So I wanted to see if you guys had any predictions for 2018. This is a little tougher than the story of the year, I would think. Does anyone want to go first? Anyone?
Anyone?
I'll go.
Bueller?
The kitty cat
there's
ran
a
in.
cat.
We have the
Hi,
door
kitty.
open because we're trying to get some cold air in here, and the cat came in. Who's you're gonna go first, Josh?
I have two. One is pretty concrete, and one is a little more nebulous. Oh, and the kitty cat just jumped on my lap. This cat likes me. That's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
all
Hi,
right.
kitty. There will be a major deal this year, and I think it will involve Constellation.
Them being acquired or them
Oh,
acquiring?
no, them acquiring.
Yeah.
I think
Acquired?
That would be
Or
a major
absorbing?
deal.
they will be absorbing. They will buy something along the lines of Funky Buddha. They will buy at least one notable craft brewery. I don't think AB will buy a brewery this year. I think AB is now in the sort of using the tools it has phase rather than buying more tools. But I think Constellation will do something notable this year. And probably Miller, but I'm even more confident on Constellation. The other prediction, which is the slightly more nebulous one, is I think we're going to continue. It's going to be really hard to get a good alt. Meaning that I think we're going to keep going, and this is not that bold of a prediction, but I think we're going to just
Yeah.
keep going away from sort of
Yep.
like classic stuff.
Yep.
And like the pastry stout thing this year and the hazy IPA thing this year. I think people are just going to be. Well, I mean, there's two brewery owners in the room. I'd love to hear what you think about this.
I think we're going to I agree. Stylistically, we're going to continue to narrow what is being made.
Lots of chug life, I think, is going to be happening.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the year of chug life.
Pilsners, light lagers, there's no risk to that. But anything like ambers or brown or let alone an alt or
Yeah, and it's
things
going
that
to
are
be.
not
And we're going to be
sexy.
going increasingly into the wilderness in terms of like,
Scottish ales.
sweeter flavors merged into classic styles, and just like sort of people throwing crap at the wall, seeing what sticks. And I personally am looking forward to moving past this era and this chunk of beer history.
Okay. And he was interested in what you two had to say, Ed and Jerry.
As the
and-
people who actually make beer.
Yeah.
Well,
Jerry,
you know,
how about,
we-
I want to ask Jerry. Jerry started out with a classic, like, Abbey Belgian-focused brewery. And now you make mainly sours, hazy IPAs, and pastry stouts. So if that doesn't tell you
Guilty.
something. And the crazy thing is, we were talking about this 2 days ago. We were having Hubbard's Cave and Le Grand Monde, and marveling at what now I'm just recounting what was said, and there were witnesses, so I'm not just blowing smoke or trying to kiss your butt, Jerry. And you weren't even booked for the show at the time. And I said, we're just marveling at how well you make beers and how consistently you make good beers, and how your pastry stouts are among the better pastry stouts, and your hazy beers are among the better hazy beers, and your sour beers are, I think, just remarkably good and consistent. And on top of it all, really, I think still the best beers you make are classic Belgian styles, which is, I would think, where at least a part of your heart lies. And it just is a kind of a credit to, what being a pro brewer is, one, and two, just your ability to get it done.
Well, I think I don't know if this is part of predictions, but breweries need to turn on a dime these days. And you make something and it sells really well, and you gotta make more of it, and it just kind of works that way. And the stuff that doesn't sell well, even though they can be great beers, when you're small, it pays the bills. And I'm definitely chasing, profitability.
You're a beer seller as much as you are a beer maker.
Yeah, I
You gotta sell the beer.
Hey, I make no bones about it. I was on, a different interview, and I basically told people that I was on the brink of bankruptcy multiple times, and I'm not now, and I'm much happier. So,
So is this the downside of 6,000 breweries and so much diversity and so much choice? The fact that you do have to pivot on a dime now because there's so much competition, because things are changing every 10 minutes, basically?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Like you can't just go into the market with what the typical was back in the day, where you had IPA, a pale ale, a porter, and an amber, and just expect to sell those 4 beers.
But Jerry, you had one of the best triples being made in the country, in my mind. You had one of the best quads. Your Belgian stout was one of the best I'd ever had. You were making exceptionally good beer, and it didn't work. It didn't work as well as it needed to. It didn't work as well as the stuff that you're focusing on now, and I'm glad that that's what you're doing. This cat is awesome. Love it. If you can hear the satire in my voice. Good.
I'd like to just, talk about my prediction, because it leads into this. The fact that these breweries have to turn on a dime. Jerry was close to bankruptcy several times. A lot of small breweries out there are struggling to figure out what to do. And you do have to follow some trends. But, of course, the fact that Jerry is a great brewer means he can make any style of beer, and it's going to be a good liquid. But the news here in Illinois is that there are no more new breweries scheduled to open in the state. So
really?
Yes.
That's true?
Well,
yeah.
But that was a snapshot in time. I think that could have changed today. I saw that tweet from guys drinking beer.
Right.
Who are awesome.
Right. It could change today, but that's the first time we could say this in years, that nothing's scheduled to open.
Whoa.
So, are we reaching peak brewery capacity in Illinois?
That's a huge story.
Yeah. Is that so?
Well, again, I would say it's a snapshot in time. What if we go 3 months and that's the case?
Let's bring
that's
it up
a huge story.
Next week, we'll talk about that, and we'll see what it's like.
Yeah.
We'll see if
So
that's the
my
same
other-
next week.
my other
Maybe it's just
prediction-
because it was like everyone's waiting for 2018 to hit or something. Who knows?
Yeah. I am also predicting that a few more
Wow.
breweries will close in Illinois.
Which ones? I know.
Let's go there.
No, I don't really mean that. I just
No, I
know
do. Let's
when
go there.
Josh is on. When Josh or Andy Crouch, the beer scribe, is on, that will be asked because they want the dirt. They're journalists. They want.
It's not dirt. It's real talk. Actually, it's hashtag real talk.
Yeah. Well, which ones
I would
do you
say
think
the
will close?
ones that are most vulnerable are the ones without tap rooms. That's you know,
sure.
For sure.
Oh, and
Like Mars.
That goes back
Mars
to
Community Brewing.
Well, eventually you'll get there.
Yeah.
One of these days. That goes back to the conversation of 30, 40 minutes ago when Chris Quinn was talking about the rise of the tap room, and Ed was saying something else, and blah, blah, blah. But what I wanted to interject and didn't at the time, but it will now, is that 5-7 years ago, it was a plausible business model to open a brewery without a tap room. Now it is absolutely not. I mean, if you own a brewery and you don't have a tap room, you're a moron. No, I'm just kidding. It's for Ed.
Thank you.
But you're in the process of opening one. So, I mean, clearly, like, you need to have a tap room at this point.
I also want to step back and say, you were saying that tap rooms are the best and are the coolest and this and that. I
Well, maybe it's because I'm sitting.
completely. I've been to many tap rooms for years and years, and I love them. I think they're good for the business. They are not the coolest. Bars are and always will be the coolest.
Tap rooms are the coolest.
No.
I'm on team tap room.
You're on team
Okay,
austere,
okay.
sterile environment.
I'm
Hey,
on team
I-
authenticity experience.
In
It's
terms
like-
of like a beer experience,
a bar can't give you that.
I'm on team the beer traveled 50 feet to my glass.
I'm
Yeah,
down.
and that's-
that I'm down with. That's cool.
and that's one of my points.
and I love bars, but yes, I think tap rooms have like
Yeah.
a unique power.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
But they're not as cool. I don't think.
Well, Chris, once we do open our tap room,
Have you been to
Yes.
Half Acre?
you'll revisit this conversation and go, "Oh yeah, Ed was right."
No, there's ones that can do both. Yours is going to be amazing. Well, we have other predictions. That was Josh started out with 2. Jerry, what do you think is going to be the story of 2018?
I'm looking at the trend that all these bigger breweries are going to open tap rooms or brew pubs in different cities throughout the country.
Ballast Point in Chicago.
And I would just throw out there my prediction is Sierra Nevada will announce something, In some
brew
big
pub
market.
somewhere.
a brew pub in some market.
Well, even smaller breweries or regional breweries like Collective Arts has plans to open up a tap room in Brooklyn, a brewery in Brooklyn. I mean, Mars would love to open up small tap rooms, brew pubs, anywhere in the country
How about
and outside of the country.
Like
Green
you want to do like
Flash
Brooklyn,
and-
San Francisco, Austin.
no, maybe Southern
Where else?
California,
Yeah, SoCal. No.
maybe somewhere on the East Coast, not Boston, Chris. But no, the thing is, I think
Yeah,
every
we don't want you, Ed.
okay.
You can't hang here.
I'm gonna stop sending those cases of beer to you that I never sent in the first place.
Where's Green Flash? They're opening in like Omaha or something.
Are they really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, this was smart. They had sort of a buy low opportunity because there was someone leaving a space. It's Omaha or Lincoln. It's
Nebraska,
or Kansas. What Oklahoma? It's somewhere over there. So now I sound like a New Yorker talking
Yeah,
about
right.
Chicago. But no, Green Flash is opening in. I think it's Omaha.
Yeah, and Ballast Point in Chicago.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Jolly
a great.
Pumpkin
I
just
think
opened.
and of course,
That's a
Goose
great
Island
prediction.
has been doing that for years, and that's been a strategy that they recognized a while ago.
And Brooklyn's doing it globally.
AB is doing it like crazy.
Lagunitas. Yeah.
It's not even. Goose,
Anyways,
it's
it makes
AB.
sense if you're a brewery and you have if you want to grow your capacity, you want to be a part of these different regional
Oh, when
communities. or
Sierra
towns.
does it, that'll be the
We're all going to go there and drink pale
mark
ale.
my words. Mark it down.
Juicy
Where
pale.
will Sierra do it? Just off the top of your head, go for it.
New York.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Here's a question: Is why hasn't Sam Adams done that? Seems
Yeah.
like they should have done it 15 years ago.
Don't
Right.
they have baseball stadiums?
Yeah, they have
Sponsorship
baseball
deals,
teams.
but
What's your story of the year, Chris?
prediction.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback
yeah, prediction,
off of
sorry.
what Josh said, but I'm gonna go a little bit bigger in scope. Yeah, I mean, I think Constellation could very easily scoop up another, funky Buddha-sized brewery. But for me, I'm more interested in, predicting, I guess, as it were, even though I don't like to be, some sort of soothsayer.
Wait a minute, that's your job.
It's not my job. My job is simply
I know.
to report on the industry, not to predict things. But since you're asking me, I would like to predict that a larger entity, even in the craft world, maybe like a Boston Beer or a New Belgium or a Yingling, I mean, something like that. Probably not Sierra Nevada, but maybe one of those three could be involved in a major deal, as in being sold. There's always rumblings of that.
So, of those three, of Boston Beer, New Belgium, and Yingling, which one do you think's the most likely to go? Which one do you think's the least likely to go of the three?
Probably Yingling.
Yeah, I'd say.
I think Yingling's a generational transfer.
What would it take for New Belgium to be sold? Because it's employee owned now, right? It just takes an offer and a critical
make enough
mass
of the
employees to
rich.
vote.
Yeah, make enough of them rich.
Yeah. I mean, I think if a third party determined that it was the best deal for the employee owners, then it would. I'm not sure of the specifics of their ESOP, but it would probably go to some kind of employee vote, which I think is similar to what happened at Full Sail. And I would have to imagine that most people would vote for a sale if it was something that benefited them all financially.
Though that gets into the question of who would those people really vote to sell to ABI? And I'm just throwing that out there, as an on their conscience, would they do that? I wonder.
I think so many of them wouldn't care.
That's a great question.
Some of them would.
I don't know the specifics of how the ESOP is structured, but I almost wonder if there's a mechanism by which they're almost forced to sell, they have no choice. I'm sure there's got to be some sort of way where a high bidder can take that company, no matter what the employees say. I would imagine. I'm just a total guess. I have no idea, but can't imagine that you come in and you offer $1 billion for New Belgium or more, and maybe it would take more. Then employees wouldn't look at that and say, yeah, we're not going to do it because it's we don't like the ethos of the buyer.
There are definitely examples out there, and they're hard to dig up because people are often in NDAs and don't want to talk about that stuff. But there are a lot of examples out there of people getting offers from breweries that they're not comfortable with and turning them down. Firestone Walker, for instance, had a lot of opportunity other than Duvel.
Sure, and AB was rumored to have been close to a deal with Firestone, or at least been knocking on their door.
My book is out June 1st.
No,
I've heard the same. Yeah,
chapter 24.
But that's not an employee-owned company, right?
Right. No, exactly.
Certainly a lot more freedom for the brewery owner there to sit down and say, well, we just don't like the buyer, so therefore we're not going to sell, and you get the buck stops with me. I mean, that's sort of why Jim Koch hasn't sold Boston Beer, right? But I think at some point Jim's going to have to potentially give that up, or maybe he'll consider it to maximize his shareholder value and his value. I mean, their stock hasn't exactly been the best thing running this year. So
that's the one that always made the most sense to me, Chris, was Boston Beer coming up, doing something ultimately.
Yeah, and I've heard whispers about that from time to time. It's never been anything legit or concrete, but their name seems to keep popping up. Same with New Belgium. The other one that has been rumored, I guess, is maybe Heineken making a play for Molson Coors or Miller Coors. I don't know. I mean, maybe even something larger than craft. So I think a very large deal could occur in 2018.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see. The other one I noticed you were mentioning was Walmart and/or Amazon / Whole Foods disrupting the 3-tier system. I think that's a very good guess. I think in 2018 we will start to see it. I think the online wine game is over. The cards have been dealt, and we're just going to play it out. And there'll be some people who essentially kind of can make it, but if Amazon chooses to, they have one online, like generic, or really as much as deep as they want to go. The online alcohol game has been won by Amazon. They win. They win with the acquisition of Whole Foods. It's essentially, to me, I think, game over. Walmart, I think, is another one that you mentioned, Chris. I think could also go there, but I think Amazon is more likely to do that. You can order somewhere. They have distribution points within your state in 35 of the 50 states with Amazon right now. And if, there's been talk about, a Target acquisition, if that were the case, then it would be all 50 states, I would imagine. And then, they can easily fulfill any alcohol order, that there is to you. And it's just, the infrastructure's there. They just bought it. And if they care to go there, I think they have. And unless they also acquire Drizzly or someone like that, if they haven't already, it's done.
Yeah, I think we're really going to see the e-commerce space start to develop next year. I mean, it's got to, right?
Yeah.
I think what a lot of these folks, certainly the Drizzly folks, have conveyed publicly and to me is that alcohol e-commerce is like 7 years behind regular e-commerce, right? So I think that at some point that just has to develop. And Now if you look at, the Drizzlies and the Saucies and the mini bars of the world, all of them take a little bit different approach. And, I'm not certain exactly which model is going to sort of bear out as the, the most successful or the one that should be adopted. But I think all three of those companies are probably watching very closely what Amazon does, what Walmart does, what any of these companies with serious scale and serious financial resources, what they're doing in the e-commerce space, because it's got to develop, and they're going to figure it out.
I'll throw that to 2019 or beyond, actually, but I think it's a little bit more complicated to are you saying almost any product, any beer that they would want, they could do in any state?
Well, no, it's more complicated than that, but they can easily fulfill beer orders in every state, essentially, is what they'll be able to do. Maybe not Unane beer, but, you'll be able to just more completely than anybody else. I think they'll be able to do it. And who knows, maybe they can also lobby to legalize things that would be to just their advantage, essentially. And
I'll say the lobbying might start next year, but
Yeah.
I think it's going to take a little while before they really get going.
But I think it's a good prediction to start seeing that. Yeah. There's one more.
Are there any figures on how much Liquid, Drizzly, Saucy, Mini Bar, and the other sites move?
Not Liquid. Drizzly processed 1 million transactions last year, which, if you look at their first 4 years, I believe they processed 1 million transactions, for the first 4 years of their existence.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so they're growing. They don't really share.
That's not many at all. That's not many transactions at all. 1 million? They're a national company, or are they only in like 1 or 2 markets?
They're in 70 markets, I think.
70 markets and 1 million transactions? That doesn't sound like many. I know how many transactions we do. That doesn't sound very many to me. Anyway.
Can we talk about pricing real quick?
I wanted to get to my prediction. Can we get to mine?
Does it involve pricing?
You can make it and be involved. Yeah.
Okay, your prediction
my prediction is more breweries are going to focus, and I want to know if you guys completely disagree. More breweries are going to focus on core products. The seasonals and even annuals, focusing on retaining drinkers and getting them loyal to the brands. The days of new will begin to see the early beginnings of a lull. So many qualifiers there.
Hedge a little more there, homie.
Hedge. No, it's not that those days aren't over, but I think this crowded market means people need as the market gets more crowded, I think breweries are going to want to have consumers be able to get a specific beer from them and be able to get it.
Surely every brewery would love that, but that's not where we talked about promiscuity before. I mean, that's where the consumer's at. And maybe in 2022 we'll look back and say, yes, 2018 was the year where that began. I don't think we'll be able to tell in a year.
I think they're going to start making more and more of a. I think the smaller guys and the bigger guys are going to continue to make a push.
How do you do that though? Just fewer SKUs?
I think it'll probably start off or on premise. I would guess
on premise
is trying to get steady handles, trying to get beers that are always on. I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know.
Well, you own a bar,
or maybe placements.
I mean, are you hearing that from the distributors you're dealing with, from the breweries you're dealing with?
I do know that a lot of the beers that we have on consistently are also the ones that week in, week out are the most popular. Obviously not the most popular overall, because if everything else is only on for 1 week and they're on for 3 months, they're going to sell more. But week in and week out, they tend to be the more popular beers. Now, obviously, we keep them on because they're popular, but they continue to be popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could argue that if Amazon gets into this game, that it'll force breweries, at least the regionals or larger than
Thank you for just
breweries.
Ignoring my thing and going back to Amazon. I'm kidding.
I'm agreeing with you that you'll have to have these kind of core brands available all the time, right? And also, you could argue that since there's growth in the tap rooms are keeping people out of bars and they're keeping their beer exclusive to the tap rooms, it's quite possible they'll make their core brands more available to bars, restaurants, and retailers because they have this kind of sense of exclusivity with these other products that you don't want to switch over anyways. Mm-hmm. So it's possible. I'm not sure it's going to happen. I believe there's a promiscuous market as well. But it's possible.
Oh, I do too.
It's possible because tap rooms will only have these core brands available for you to purchase.
I think at some point there's going to be a point where the idea of walking into a store and everything being different every time is no longer cool. It's frustrating. How about that? Like, it used to be like, wow, everything is different, or there's this to try. It used to be like back in the day, Jerry, you go and like you'd see what has changed. Like, oh, I want to try that. Oh, this seasonal's back out. I want to try that. Now you go in and everything has changed. We've got guys who, if they're not in the bottle shop, if they go from 5 days a week to 2 days a week in the bottle shop, they're like, I don't know what's in the shop anymore. I don't know any of these beers. These are people who work in a craft beer store who don't know what's going on, and they're in one for 15 hours a week. That has to be, at some point, exhausting for a consumer. I would imagine. I could be wrong. And I think people are going to want some sort of middle ground where there's some stuff that's always changing, but something that they can just go back to.
Well, there's a lot that people can go back to. I mean, there's tons of year-round brands and seasonal brands.
Right, but I think you're going to start seeing a push, a reassertion of those brands.
And how will they be reasserted?
You asked me that. I don't know.
Well, some breweries aren't going to make good beer.
I own a liquor store. What do I know?
You're going to get burned by a brand that you picked up that was new, and you're not going to buy it again, or you're not going to try them again. That's one reason why maybe you're predicting might happen. Yeah, I mean,
we gotta hurry up. If there's any other predictions that need to happen or anything else people want to talk about, we've got 10 minutes essentially.
The Cubs will win the World Series again in 2018.
Oh,
Booyah. Yeah! Fist bump. Boom. And we're gonna beat the Red Sox. Oh no, you like the Giants, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. We'll beat the Giants in the NLCS. How about that?
Hey, if we make it that far, I'll be very pleased.
Yeah, God bless.
Nothing else. Nobody wants to talk about anything else.
Any more predictions for the year?
Or anything at all. We can, or because I can keep talking about predictions. I can talk about 2018. I can talk about anything.
You want to go into 2019?
We can go to 2019 if you
Let's
want.
go.
The Cubs will also win the
Win
World
for a
Series in 2019.
Oh yeah.
Booyah!
You guys should get like Matt Groening on the show to do your predictions. He's always right.
Yeah, he is actually
Is he really?
I just don't. I'll go back to
in his own
Chris's thing.
fantasy realm.
I just don't. I don't see the new thing going away yet. Not for a while.
Oh, going
I know
away?
that the
I don't think
desire
it's gonna
for
be
that to
going
be
away.
going away.
I don't think it's going to be going away. I don't think it's going to be going away. I think that you're going to start to see, and I went on a limb. I could be wrong, but I think you're going to start seeing some fatigue. How about some signs of fatigue in 2018?
Can we just talk about
That
the
it
elephant in the
being-
room real quick?
It being
Let's
new.
just
yeah.
get there.
Yeah, sure.
What
What-
elephant?
what-
in the
what's
room?
the elephant in
What's
the
the
room?
elephant? I missed the elephant.
Bring it up.
Or is it a bull in a china shop?
So there's an interesting story this week on the beer Twitter.
Oh, that elephant in the room.
Yeah. Let's
That
just
one.
come on. Everyone's talking about it has been talking about it for the last 24 hours, and we'll be continuing to talk about it for the next.
You're talking about the boys,
12 hours.
the boys' Twitter account.
Yeah, let's just knock
story
it out real quick.
That one of our guys, Brian Roth, wrote about on Good Beer Hunting. That has caught the ire of quite a few people. I have to be 100% fair. I haven't read the article. I don't really. I haven't read it.
Ouch. Okay, well that sets us back a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't read it. To be
Chris,
fair,
did you read it?
Yeah.
And Chris, what do you think?
Okay, there you go. Can you give us a little bit of context to it for the people maybe out there who haven't read it?
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So apparently, I'll try to get. I think it's about misogyny in craft brewing culture and the
Misogyny and lack of diversity.
yes.
Yeah,
And-
which I think those were probably two separate stories.
Yes, that's the thing. Yes.
Okay.
I understand that the overall sort of gist is that there are some, general social awareness, diversity, sexism, misogyny issues. Wrap all that up. I get it. I think every industry is sort of struggling with that right now, and in particular, the beer industry has made some strides in the last 12 months or more to address some of those concerns and some of those issues. And I think that is sort of the intent of the piece, is to start talking about that and to open up a dialogue.
And he seemed to have ticked off a lot of brewers, and there's been a lot of blowback. And what I will say is, I think I don't think that's really the baby elephant in the room, Josh. If you said let's go there.
Let's go there.
So let's go there. I think the elephant in the room, in this room anyway, as exemplified by Chris, is the fact that people are often wary, I'll even say afraid, of coming out because GBH can be very aggressive in going after detractors. For whatever reason, whether obviously the people there think that it's not fair and inaccurate and stuff like that, but that is why people don't want to necessarily bring it up, is because they're afraid of being targeted,
Trolled.
I would guess.
Yeah, trolled, targeted, getting Kaisered, I think is a phrase. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, is that fair to say, Josh? I mean, if we're going to go there, or is that not fair to say?
That's probably fair to say. Probably fair.
Yeah.
Well, one of probably we need another half hour to talk about this, and we don't have it. But one of the interesting things to come out of this story was the Instagram accounts of these breweries, some very well respected breweries, including Half Acre and Perennial, Second Shift in St. Louis. And they weren't really given opportunities to speak for themselves. And the way that they tied into sort of the broader story didn't really make a whole lot of sense necessarily. And these Instagram accounts are sort of secondary Instagram accounts.
Did it seem like a hit job to you?
Well, I was going to say they're sort of secondary Instagram accounts where they're not really consumer facing. So it wasn't really clear necessarily how that fit into the broader issue.
Josh, here's the litmus test. Would your editor at the Tribune have let this go as it was?
So, Chris, you just nailed the exact issue, which is, look, I have a lot of respect for the guy who wrote the story, Brian, and he's been on this show a number of times, I believe.
Yeah.
He's a sharp dude. He's a critical thinker. I think that the failure on this article was really in the editing, which is what Chris just said. Would your editor No, my editor would not. That's where the breakdown was. Brian, I think, reported his butt off. It's pretty clear he had a lot of interesting stuff there. That stuff probably some of it should have been cut away and never seen the light of day. Some of it should have gone into one story. Some of it should have gone into another story. It should not have gone into this story. Andy Crouch of Beer Advocate, who I assume has also been on the show a number of times, he called the story, I can't get this out of my head because he nailed it so hard, messy and frenetic. Like, that's exactly what the story was.
Mm-hmm.
So disjointed.
Yeah, it was just, it didn't make sense. And it didn't even...
So why is everyone talking about a messy and really frenetic story?
Convince me that there was a story there, and there probably is a story there, but it didn't even really sort of follow through on the initial premise that there is a problem. It was so disjointed that... And then the problem is that all these breweries are kind of...
maligned in the piece.
Well, I was going to say pissed, but I mean, it's like I can imagine being one of those brewery owners, and I know some of those guys and have a lot of respect for what they do. And, it's a... I don't know that it was that fair of a context for them to be put into.
Well, and my I guess the issue that I have is that because it probably needed another pass or two on the edit side, now we're talking about that instead of what we should be talking about, which is these issues of diversity and sexism in the beer industry. And it just, that detracted, I think, from the conversation that we could be having.
Agreed.
And that's all. I mean,
yeah. And honestly, I'm not even sure where that all stands right now. I think diversity, with sort of air quotes, whatever that means. I mean, I would love to see it get better. I don't want to see it, quote unquote, get better just for the sake of getting better. I just want to see everyone who wants to have an opportunity to open a brewery or be a part of the industry to be able to open a brewery and be part of the industry. But I don't really have a very clear sense of where things stand in terms of misogyny. I mean, like the offensive beer names and offensive beer labels, we've played that one to death. And I do honestly think that's getting better. I mean, because that conversation has been had for 2 or 3 years now.
Sure.
But are there hostile workplaces? I mean, we've been talking about, for the last 6 months, the conversation in this country has been about sexism and hostile workplaces and environments for women. And, thank God we're having that conversation. Nothing's come out about breweries. I mean, is it happening in the beer world?
I'm assuming it's happening everywhere.
Probably, but I mean, is it?
I'm assuming nothing is safe. We do have to go. We're already over the time.
My point is, I wish the article had there had been more there. Yeah.
Well, that and I don't know how many people are on the show right now. 5 of us, right? And I'm not in the room, so I can't just easily look around. we're all dudes talking about this, and I think that's another, sort of point of contention for people, is that like you have this sense that women are being sort of mansplained to, and I think that's something to consider if you're an editor or if you're the one reporting it. There really needs to be a lot of eyeballs on something like that, and it's an important issue to talk about. And I hope the conversation continues. And it was a good way to, I guess, open the discussion, or a decent way to start it. And it's only going to get better from here, I think.
All right. Well, guys, I wanted to thank my guests for being on my year-end show.
Guys, literally.
Yeah, guys. Ed, Mar, Jerry, Josh, and Chris. Thank all of you for listening. I really appreciate it. Insiders at craftbeertemple.com. Send me a letter. Tell me what your story of the year was. We have to go. We're going to make this short and sweet. Thank you to Serge. Thank you to everybody else. I will see you next week with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable.
Remember, this is what
I mean,
we
the fun.
wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.